Hello, everyone. It's Donna Cravata, and we are here again with another live interview for the Real 50 Over 50. And today we have Kirsti Samuels. She's a leadership strategist and the founder and CEO of KS Insight, a leadership and strategy consultancy in New York City. She served as the executive director and adaptive leadership network in its startup years and is an adjunct professor at Columbia University, where she teaches leadership in action, leading and managing in moments of adversity and opportunity, and managing yourself as a leader. Skills and practices for high stakes moments to master students at the School of International and Public Affairs. For over 25 years, Kirsti has specialized in tackling complex problems with innovative approaches, and her work has spanned executive teams, senior country leadership, and even armed rebel groups. She holds a doctorate in law from Oxford University, a master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School, and a Bachelor of Science and Law from Sydney University. But today we're going to focus on, I guess it would be your passion project.
Maybe passion project, or maybe just the most important project.
Yes. I agree. She launched something called the Women Igniting Leadership Lab, and she launched that the year that she turned 51 after having a moment of clarity and deciding to stop waiting for permission, wondering why she was even waiting for permission. The lab is also known as WILL, WILL, and it's an immersive journey for women leaders who are ready to lead differently, more effectively, more intentionally, and with more support. It's not just theory, inspiration, and reflection, it's an actual lab where leadership mastery is practiced, tested, and ignited. Her vision is a world where more women are leading in senior roles and doing it in ways that reflect their values, their strength, and their intelligence, and is much needed. Welcome, I'm sorry, Kirsti. I have a client, Kirsti, and I was working with her all day today, so I'm going to flip back and forth. Welcome, and I want to hear all about what you're doing, why you started this, like what were the things that were happening in your day-to-day life, working in academia, working in the corporate world, just traveling the roads you were traveling that made you realize that this was so needed.
It's funny because actually where I want to start is my first leadership role was a disaster.
Mm.
Like, it genuinely was. And it really hurt me. It was the first time that I was put in a leadership role. I was just thrown in. No one talked to me about what it meant or what I was supposed to be doing. And I was pretty proud of myself. I was pretty excited, like, oh, I get to be a manager and whatever. And I did a horrible job because I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't even know what the purpose was. It was as if I kind of thought that my team were like more hands, like, okay, like I just get more hands. So that's great. We'll do more work. I have more hands. And it never really occurred to me that there was a skill set, there was a mindset, there was, a frame of reference around what does it look like to lead? Because we train people to do the main thing that they do. We train them to be great at something, like an expert, like, I was a lawyer, so I was great at legal stuff. And no one had said, well, actually, this is a whole new journey.
Yeah.
So starting there, but then it wasn't that I gave up on the noticing. It's that I started a career in peace mediation, and I was in like war zones, genuinely, like working with people. And I was really noticing like some people were great at achieving an outcome that was going to successfully move the country, beyond the conflict into a future. And some just weren't. And it wasn't smarts. It wasn't charisma. It was something else. It was this kind of set of skills. So I pivoted at some point and I went back to school. And as you said, I went to the Kennedy School at Harvard, and I did my mid-career program focusing just on leadership. Like, what do we know? What don't we know? How do we train? Is it learnable? Can you learn to lead? And that was the mix I was in. I was doing that work. I was doing it with corporations. I was teaching. I'm still teaching at Columbia. I love the work. It's really hard. It's complex. It's interesting. It involves humans. But I I was noticing that I was having the same conversation again and again with some of the, the corporations, the companies I was working with. I would say to them, I really want us to run a women's leadership program. And they would say, I love that idea. That's such a great idea. How about next year? And then next year didn't come. And it didn't come. And it's not that I think that women need different leadership training. It's not really that. In fact, when we created a leadership program, one of my colleagues and I, for women legislative leaders, and the organization that hired us to do it said, oh, well, this is the same training we would give a man. And we were like, yeah, that makes sense. It's leadership training. It's not like, I don't know, hair braiding. It's leadership training.
It's not pink.
It's not pink. It's, we're looking to build leaders here. And so it's not that the training needs to be different. There are some aspects that we think about differently because, we're socialized differently. We're looking at different challenges, but the skill set is really important. So realizing, as you said, I woke up one day and it was one of these really odd moments where I thought, I have never been told I couldn't do anything as a woman. I did not, I grew up in a family where they were like, yes, you can do it, change the world, be you. And yet there I was waiting for someone to say, you can do this. Somehow I was still waiting for someone to say, no, you really should go and do that. Go do that. We give you permission to do that. And in some ways I was like, oh gosh, really? Like if those of us who have everything, who have the law degree and the doctorate and who teach at the, famous institutions are still waiting for someone to say, yeah, you can go do that. Oh, really?
There's something broken somewhere along the line.
Like why is that the case?
Yeah. So how does that factor into the framework of what you've created?
So in some ways, it's not that we're saying just go do it, because I just went and did it when I was in my 30s and I messed it up pretty badly. But we're definitely saying don't wait for someone to tell you you are allowed to do this. Get out there, figure out what you want to do, and then develop the skills. And that's what we decided. So I pulled together some fantastic women leaders and women educators of leadership. And I said to them, come do this with me. Let's do it. Why not? And so we created WILL, which, as you said, Women Igniting Leadership Lab. And the lab is essentially what is novel about our approach, because we're saying to people, you cannot hope women who haven't had the flight hours are going to be able to learn on the job in the same way that you could learn something else on the job, because the system judges you really harshly. So you cannot be put in a position of authority, fumble, and then hope that you can learn in the next iteration, or that they're going to still trust you, or, all figures of authority, all leaders have everyone's eyes on them anyway. And then really the standard is a little bit more extreme when you're a woman leader, because maybe they're not used to you, or they're not used to your style, or whatever it is. So we cannot have our women leaders just fumbling their way through if we want them to succeed. So we said, all right, let's create a space where we can train, where we can practice, where we can stand in front of the group that's upset with you and shouting at you and still be steady and still be listening and still be strategic, because it's not really leadership in the moment. Doesn't start in the moment. It starts in the training so that you're ready for the moment, right? It's not like some magical thing, like put you in a difficult situation and, oh, you're suddenly going to know how to lead. No, we train for that. We train our firefighters to go into burning buildings so that they don't freak out. So this is what we were saying, let's train and let's create the environment where we can train women in a safe but intense space to develop the skills we need to be excellent leaders. And as I said, in moments of high intensity, in moments of really important decisions, when the going gets tough is when you need that skill set. And that's what we want to train people to be able to do. Exactly.
And that's where, the mishaps will happen, because, you're really on the line at that moment, and the pressure is there. and it's money, it's trust, it's credibility, it's people's lives.
Yeah.
And you can't make those decisions at that point without having deep training where you're doing it from instinct, not just knowledge.
And that's exactly right. I think that we had a whole series of years where we thought leaders were just born. And there was just a sense like, oh, they're a good leader. They're not a good leader. They must have been born that way. And it's a misunderstanding of what we know about leadership, actually, because it is not the case that leaders are born. You might end up with someone who is charismatic. That doesn't mean they're going to be a good leader, because the leadership skill set is kind of two buckets, I think. There's the really understanding systems and how human systems operate. And I think of it like as the diagnostic bucket. They're like new glasses. Like you, instead of seeing something that's happening around you in a simple way, you see it in a complex way. You see how one thing is influencing something else, or you see the symptom versus the root cause, and that allows you to make decisions that are complex, that in a way that will lead to the right outcome. It's a bit like, you don't go to the doctor and say, gee whiz, my arm is hurting, and they wrap your arm. Like, they're like, well, what's this? This is the symptom. Great. What's the root cause? Let's deal with that. So that training to be able to understand, why is it that this system is reacting like this? Why are the humans reacting the way they are? And humans, we are so interesting. Humans are just fascinating. We press here thinking that it's going to do this, and actually it does that. You're like, well, what the, like, people, some of our clients come to us and say, we're trying to increase motivation, so we're giving people more money. And I'm like, oh, that's never going to work. And they're like, why not? We're giving money, more motivation. I'm like, that's just not how humans work. Increase meaning, don't increase money. Like, it's not how we work. So there's that. There's like, okay, well, there's a whole thing here to learn. And then there's the holding yourself, because we as leaders come with all of our history and all of our baggage and all the things we've been told to believe. And sometimes we don't even know we're bringing that information with us, and it trips us up, and we don't see what we need to work on. So it's the two, right? There are skills that are diagnostic skills, and then there are managing yourself and understanding yourself skills. The two together is magic.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so much that is left just not done with connecting people with their own strength, so they understand how they can lead from their own strength, how they can get that part to become fine-tuned. So it's the part that helps them make the decisions. It's the part that helps them see how the systems connect. And that's what really drives everything. And that's so often left out from any kind of training, because they're doing the tactics. They're not incorporating the humanity of it.
And the lessons we learn along the way are not necessarily the right lessons. Either, which is so interesting, because you have to unlearn some lessons.
Yes.
One of the things that I realized recently, and this is kind of crazy for me, because I have worked with executive coaches for decades, and I am an executive coach, and yet I can still find out new things about my leadership patterns. And so recently we've been playing with how we can use different AI tools to build new leadership capacities, right? So we've come up with this tool that I'm quite fond of, because I discovered something new about myself using it. It's a tool that we're putting a series of scenarios that would be uncomfortable, and then we're asking you to notice what would your first instinct be. So one of the scenarios, for instance, is like you're on a call with your team, and one of your clients is on the call, and they get really upset, and they start shouting, and they claim that it's the fault of your team that things are not working. So like, oh, all right, we're like, what do you do? How do you respond in that moment? So we have this tool now, and it allows you to go through a bunch of scenarios, and then it looks for you at what is your initial instinct on how you use your authority, because essentially that's what you're looking at, right? So I did this tool. I helped design it. I ran it, I did it, and I looked at the result and I was like, what is this? It's saying that I don't stand in my authority. I don't feel confident using my authority in moments where it's going to be upsetting to others in the system. It's like, that's odd, right? I'm a powerful person, right? I run my own firm. I've worked in conflict zones. That's odd. And then I was reflecting on it, and I was thinking back to the first time I was squashed as a young woman speaking up in a meeting where I was amongst much more senior people. And I spoke up in the meeting, and I was pulled aside afterwards, and I was told that was inappropriate. What you said in that meeting was not helpful, and it made me embarrassed. And this was the leader of this meeting that said this. And that shaped how I showed up for 20 years afterwards.
Yes, that's what happens.
How terribly insane is that? And it was not mean. It was not badly intended. It was definitely their perspective, right? I was junior. I should have maybe figured out how to intervene more sophisticatedly. But there it is, 20 years later, shaping how I show up as the leader of my own firm.
Can we speak for a moment about how AI reflected that back to you? Because this is exactly the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I help people reconnect their stories through using AI tools to help them find the patterns in their work over a series of different careers or different pathways, or just because we forget what we did.
Oh my
We don't
gosh.
think about that. We're thinking about what's next. So I help them reconnect the patterns of their own history. And it's so interesting that that was what reflected it back to you. And how are you seeing that in your work when you're working in the lab with leaders, with emerging leaders?
The reason I started becoming interested in AI, first of all, I'm an early adopter by nature. So, you give me the self-driving car and I'm in it being like, yeah, let's do it. Right? Hooray, this is fun. So I was always going to be interested in this tool. But what really started to make sense for me when I started to think, how can I use it, is that these are behaviors that we're trying to build. It's not just a cognitive moment where you're like, oh, I got it. It's how am I going to change a behavior that I've built over maybe 30 years? And you can't change that behavior with just a moment of realization. It has to be reinforced and practiced. And so, as I said, we're creating spaces where, at least in the lab, we're creating spaces where women leaders can practice. But it's not really sufficient because people need to be able to practice on their own time as well in an effective way. And actually, it turns out these tools can be calibrated to be effective. Now, I'm not saying to anyone, just go on to ChatGPT or Claude and type it away and it's going to help you. No, we have 50 pages of instructions that shape how the AI is going to respond based on the various principles we know are going to help you. But it can allow you to try things again and again. So the one tool that I mentioned is the pattern recognition tool. The other one is the flight hours tool. And you can trial different ways of responding to a difficult scenario and see what would happen, and then get a debrief saying, all right, well, this is what you leaned into, but that was the downside of leaning into that. So let's calibrate it differently. And I think that it can be an amazing opportunity to retrain how we show up. Again, because in the moment is not when you're going to succeed. It has to be built so that in the moment you make the right connection, see the various pros and cons, and make a step forward. But it's a little bit, the pattern things I love, because I think AI is very strong at recognizing patterns. It's also crazy, in many ways still. It'll get better, but you can't be like, it's like in the beginning when you first had like, instructions in the car and people would drive off cliffs because they were like, but it told me to turn left. You cannot be like, oh yeah, AI has the answer. But it is fascinating as a tool, in particular because we are so entrenched in our lived experience as humans that it's very hard for us to see ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just really hard. I talk to my students all the time. I say, look, here are the things you know. Here are the things you know you don't know. That's a big piece. And then the rest is all the things you don't know.
Yeah.
And how are we going to find this out? How are we going to look underneath the veil and figure out how are you getting in your own way when you don't even know you don't know that? So yeah, I'm with you. I love the options that AI gives you to see patterns.
Yeah, I do as well. And I think that people are asking the wrong questions.
Say more.
They're asking, how could I do this faster? How could I do this cheaper? They're not asking, how could I do this better?
True.
They're not asking, what can I learn if I look deeper? And I think it's such a missed opportunity. I think for women over 50 that learn how to use these tools properly, they will have such an advantage. And they will be able to, create whatever opportunities they're looking to create for themselves that they could have for as long as they want on their terms. And that's given to them as a gift. And that's really kind of become my mission, is sharing these stories and helping women create businesses they could have for as long as they want and have that head snap moment when they walk in the room. I want that 70-year-old, that 80-year-old to be able to walk into the room
Of course.
and knock the socks off.
Look at the age of our president.
Guy.
We have long lives ahead of us to lead.
What I'm planning now is for the next 30 years.
You know what is so interesting about this, though, is people think that AI is kind of a technical thing. So, and people are not comfortable with technology. I get it. But actually, it's the opposite of a technical thing. It takes away the technology piece of things that I couldn't do before. I couldn't code. And I used to look at coding and be like, I don't know what this is talking about. But it turns out I don't need to learn to code. It turns out I don't need to learn a whole lot of technical skills.
No,
because AI steps in between and makes that possible. I see the future right now as a renaissance future, like the capacity to do amazing things in small groups or as solo entrepreneurs or as small organizations that in the past needed all of this technical skill set that you had to pay a lot for, are now able to try things just because that's what their passion is, or that's their interest.
They're curious. And I think that the skill set that people are missing is the skill to ask better questions.
Yes. But I have to say, Donna, I still feel a little concerned when I look at my 12-year-old son and I think, well, what are you going to do for a job?
Yeah.
Like, what is that job going to be? Because what AI is amazing for is if you have the expertise and the experience, the AI is perfect. If you don't have the expertise and the experience, you're flying blind because you don't know if it's telling you stuff that's useful or not.
Oh, my son is 23. He graduated college last year. And while he was in college, he was working in a bar restaurant. And so he got people skills doing that.
Yes.
And then he just a couple of months ago started a real job, and he's doing customer service. And he got the job because he was working in a restaurant, and they figured he would know people. And at first he was a little freaked out by the whole thing because he's an artist and he's like, is this it? Am I doing this for 40 years? I said, no, you're going to learn people and you're going to learn how to ask questions. And I think the combination of being able to use the tools for good purposes, not for faster, cheaper, and being able to understand human beings that's the combination that is what will be successful as we move forward into this world that we don't even know what it is. Because it's that combination of being able to track the humanity and track the technology and bring it together. It's never going to be one or the other. It's going to be the person who could bridge the two is going to be the person that's successful in anything that they do. And it's going to be every single industry because it touches every industry.
Yes, it is every industry. What I'm noticing with the clients that we're working with who are really are starting to realize how urgent it is for them to take this on, is that it's very dependent on the culture of the organization.
Yes.
Because in organizations that have not built a culture of innovation or a culture of psychological safety or culture of imagination, they are facing a real uphill battle because people are saying, I don't want to let go of my thing. Like I studied or I practice or I have 25 years of doing it this way. And, what are you telling me, that this is worthless now, that it's not worth anything? Versus saying, you have that amazing expertise, but we're now playing a different game.
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to use that expertise in relation to these tools that are just absurdly fast.
It's fear.
It is fear. And it's very, very scary for leaders looking at their organizations right now saying, we have built an organization that's an execution-based organization. We're very good at doing what we're good at doing. We haven't built an organization that is a learning organization.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we iterate? How do we try? How do we lean into this thing that's coming at us? It's a tsunami.
Yeah. And they're often not asking the right questions either.
No, they're not.
They're not thinking about tightening their processes and their systems to be able to educate the tools to work for them.
Yes.
What they're doing is they're looking to replace overhead,
mm-hmm.
and they're looking to save money.
And they're thinking about it as a technical thing. So they're delegating it to their technical teams, to their head of IT,
and they don't have the right skills.
And
it's
interesting.
HR, and HR doesn't have the technical skills.
Yes.
It's got to be across the board because it touches everything. Like when I was working in law firms, I started at the very beginning of word processors in the mid 80s.
Right.
And like one of the jobs that I had along my very long path there was training legal secretaries how to do billing.
Mm-hmm.
And they freaked out. I mean, some of these women had been doing this since like the 1950s, I mean, they were just freaked. They still had their typewriters on their desks because they couldn't let go of them. And I just explained to them, I said, you don't realize how empowering this is, because now you're tied to the money. You're doing something that brings money into the firm. You're not just coming here and being paid for 8 hours of your time every day. And that didn't win everybody over, but some people really thought differently about it after that, because they recognized that their position, which had no power at all, now had power because they were tied to money, and it was contingent upon them to get the bills out of the door to get paid, and that changed. It's changed the way they sat in their chair. They were different after that, and that taught me so much. And like I bring that to this now. Like I'm teaching people how to use this tool that is not what they expected, and their first immediate reaction is, it's going to take away what I do. I'm going to be irrelevant. How am I going to live? And when that faces you when you're 50, 60, 70 years old, that's scary.
Of course.
That's scary. And whether it's a corporate environment or an entrepreneurial environment, displacement is displacement. And turning that into an empowering experience, I think, is the thing that's going to make a difference, because then people will be open and curious to whether they're doing it from like the practitioner level or the leadership level, to be more open and innovative in how they use the tools.
I think that we just don't know yet what this will look like.
No, we don't.
And that means that, first of all, we have no choice. It's not like we can say, no, we're closing the door to this. This is coming.
It's
whether
here.
Whether you like it or not, here it is. A bit like globalization. Many people were like, no, I refuse to be part of globalization, but it came anyway. So here we are. We have to make sense of it. But the other thing that's so interesting is that because there is no way to know what it's going to be, any decision that is made that is like a final decision is wrong. Like I've seen firms take 6 months to decide on which AI tool they're going to use. I'm like, that's not going to help you, because all of these AI tools are evolving so quickly that the one you choose today is not going to be the right one for you
Tomorrow.
in 2 weeks. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But it's still, the tendency is to treat it as something that we need to,
Yeah.
that we can do on the old timeline, essentially. And I lived like you in a way. I lived through the big overhaul of the legal industry when we, when we went from, I used to sit with boxes in basements, trying to use my eyes like scanners. Like, is there a keyword in these documents? I mean, impossible, right? A youngster just sitting there for 15 hours a day. And then it all changed. Suddenly everything was digital. Suddenly all of these jobs that had been part of our day-to-day was no longer part of our day-to-day. The legal industry is interesting in how it evolved to address the digitization kind of massive change. But anything that they learned, they still had 15 years to live through it. We don't have that. AI is 1, 2, 3 years. This is big change very quickly.
It is
very, very fast.
It is. And the legal industry doesn't like to change. I mean, I remember being in a meeting where somebody said, well, this worked in 1947. Why would we change it?
Yes. I still remember when we had the conversation about whether women should be able to wear pants in court.
Oh, I was sent home for wearing a split skirt and no stockings.
Right.
I was like, really? I was like, this is what I have to do today. I ran off this list of very important things I needed to do. And I said, and you're going to send me home?
Yes, it did not change willingly, but the firms have changed because they had to. No one's doing stuff by hand that is digitized.
It's going to be interesting. That's guaranteed.
I think we can't avoid it.
No.
So
I think we just need to be flexible and open and just ask better questions. Listen. I mean, people don't listen.
No.
And I think that that's going to be more and more important as things move so fast.
Yes. What I think is going to happen is the leadership skills, the true leadership skills, are going to become even more important. Like, we do not train our leaders typically. We just allow them to fail or succeed by luck. But if we keep doing that when so much of the technical work essentially will be picked up by an AI tool, then we're really putting people at a massive disadvantage. And it is a skill set. It's a whole category of difficult to learn skills that we need to train people in.
And the tools are just going to do what we tell them to do. They're tools.
Yes.
So if what we're teaching these tools is bad leadership, we're going to get bad leadership at scale.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, already my clients often tell me, oh, I checked with ChatGPT how to say that or how to phrase that or what email to send. And I'm like, but you realize ChatGPT tries to read your mind and give you what you think you want, right? Because that's what it's doing. So depending on how you formulate your question, you're going to get an outcome that matches your formulation. So if you're frustrated and you want to fire the person, it's going to end up encouraging you to fire the person rather than encouraging you to see the system and understand, why is that happening? And would it be any better with someone else in this role? Probably not, but it's not going to have the capacity to do that. So
no. When ChatGPT first came out, I was already dabbling in AI, and I just stopped for a little bit because I said, there's two things I need to be clear on before I step into this. One is, who do I want to be in this landscape? I don't want to be the person that did something else for 15 years and now all of a sudden I'm an AI expert. I'm not. And who do I want to learn from? Because I don't want to learn from the person that was doing something else 2 years ago. And I figured that out. And then I went in and I was going to create AI on training wheels. And this was before custom GPTs. I was going to build that whole thing out easy. And I got about a month into that and I said, this is a disadvantage I'm creating because I'm not teaching people how to interact with the tools.
Yes.
So that's what I changed my stance to, is teaching people how to interact, like giving them starting points. And, and then build that relationship. Learn how to talk to them. Learn how to identify when it's taking you down the wrong road. Because what happens if you're this much off base, it quickly
Mhm.
becomes this much.
Yes. Yes. I think that this issue is happening in academia, as you can imagine. I've had to fully change how I interact with my students around assessments because you can't ask them to write pieces. It ends up being written in collaboration at a minimum with one of these AI tools. And the challenge for me is that I don't think you're learning the right skills if that's what you're doing. So I've gone to oral exams, I've gone to in-person simulations, I've gone to all sorts of other ways because I'm not really interested in their grade. Like, that is not important to me. What is important to me is that they leave with some new capacities to change the way they lead. I mean, if they don't know how to lead, they're going to get caught up. They're going to fail. In fact, when you get a bunch of 30, 35-year-old people in the room and you ask them, who has been burnt leading, everyone's hand goes up because we don't know what we're doing. So we all get burnt.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
catching them just before that. And I'm like, let me help you think about how not to get taken out when you lead. But you're not going to do that by having ChatGPT write your essay.
No, no, not at all. And I think that like people in our age category have a very important role right now because we are the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole generation of people coming up now that will only know this.
Well, yes, like my son, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, they've already had the disadvantage of COVID and having that disruption in their education and their, just human education.
Mm-hmm.
And then to go right into, oh, you don't have to think, everything's already here for you. Um, I think critical thinking, discernment,
Yes.
asking questions, these are the things that we really need to leave in our legacy.
I ask my students, I'm like, are you arguing with your AI? Because you had better be telling it that it's wrong and to try again and to find something else and to document it and have they says it sort of, you cannot let the AI do this like trundle along on its own. It doesn't know what it's doing.
It's so funny. One of the things that I teach people, we actually have like workshops that we do around this. It's sparring with AI.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It's like, do not take it as truth.
No,
Take it
no.
as an interesting starting point and then fight with it until you come
Yeah,
up with something interesting.
yeah. And again, like you can't, like you mentioned this earlier, but you can't just use one tool.
No.
Like I have an amalgamation of tools that I use, and I call it Miranda, but it's basically 4 tools, and I use them all.
Yes.
And because sometimes they don't do what you want them to do. They go off. They
And
go
they're
off.
variable day to day, which is so odd to me. Like
Well,
some
day to day,
days
you can ask
they
the
do
same
one
question
thing and
twice and get the same answer.
yes, they're very variable. It's like having like a whole cohort of interns, but you don't know which intern you're going to get on a certain day. It's like,
It's
which
hurting
intern am I
feelings.
getting? Very unpredictable.
But
Um,
I mean, the work that you do is so important because it's critical thinking
mhm.
and it's combining the human side and the learning side and the learning about yourself. And that is such an important part because it gets bypassed as things get faster.
Mhm.
Or people will do like a Myers-Briggs assessment and like just attach themselves to that. That's a suggestion.
I have I have a very strong opinion about these assessments, and it's not positive. It's not positive. I mean, they have made lots of money
Mhm.
by creating these assessments, but are they helpful? Not really. They are helpful in this one important way, which is they allow people to be more comfortable talking about things that they would not normally talk about. But other than that, they are not helpful in the sense that they don't really give you true information about where you need to work or what your predilections are or how your strong suit is getting in your way. How the skills that got you here will not get you there. I mean, they're not giving you that information.
No, they keep you rooted in who you were at the moment you took the test.
Yes.
And even then, at best, it's a suggestion.
Yeah. No, that's right.
And
I have spent, ever since my dramatic early failure at leading, I have spent a lot of time thinking about what kind of a leader I want to be, and in particular, what kind of a culture I want to create in my firm. And we do not encourage leaders to do that enough. But the way I see it is we ask people to be at work most of their lifetime in workspaces, and we ask them for that to be the substance of their life. And if we're going to do that, then I think we need to think carefully about what that experience is going to be. And so the culture that you create in your meetings, in your organization, is going to shape how somebody lives their life. I want people to come to my organization and say, I love working with KS Insight. I love working with Will. And in fact, I have people say to me, you've spoiled me for other companies, right? I'm never going to be able to go and work back where I was working before, because here I feel seen, I feel respected, and I learn, and I keep learning, and I invest in their growth, which means I give difficult feedback. It does not mean I'm, flowers and rainbows. It means I give difficult growth feedback with the clear intention of supporting people to grow. And I also care. So we create a culture where people want to be learning, want to be working. And for me, that matters because, as I said earlier, when I was chatting to you, I remember sitting in a cubicle in a law firm and thinking, oh my gosh, this is like a factory. I cannot, what is the point of my life here? So
living in 6-minute increments.
Well, yes, exactly. 6-minute increments in a room without a window, and with just also work that's going to go away. Let's be honest. I mean, AI is going to eat that lunch. So we cannot imagine that that's going to continue.
No, it's so documented and regimented. It's very easy to train an AI on legal work.
Exactly. But not on leadership.
No, not on leadership. And also, there are nuances to it as well. But, the days of having, a 25-year-old associate working 4 days in a row without leaving to churn out a 200-page document that nobody's even going to look at past page 5.
Yeah. Nope. I don't know what it'll mean for the culture of law firms that have been built on, you take your knocks and you allow
and then you torture the next round.
It's so incredibly hierarchical in how what the experience is. You make it to senior and then you have your life. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
No, it was a very unhealthy workplace. It took me years to heal from that.
Right.
It's not necessary. I like what you're doing better.
Thank you.
And we went way over, but I was so.
Oh yes, we did.
I told you before we could talk for 4 hours. Anyway, we will be sharing this, and if you are listening on the replay, please put comments, questions, ideas, tag us. We'll come back. We'll keep this conversation going. I want to share Kirsti's websites here. She has ks-insights.com and womenignitingleadership.com. Please go check her out, see what she's doing. She's active on LinkedIn. Pretty sure she's going to be active here on Substack as well pretty soon.
I think so.
And come back next week. Well, actually, next week we have our meet and mingle, but we'll be back in May with interviews, and we are booked. We're pretty much booked until August, and then I have invitations out that we're going to be booked through the end of the year pretty soon.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Donna, this is so fun. I've so enjoyed hanging with you, and I look forward to any questions that the women who will be following this and listening to this have.
Yeah, I'll be sharing it all over. So when you get your Substack, make sure I have the link so I can share
Yes.
and tag you in all of the little snippets I pull.
So fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so incredibly important. And we'll be back with more.
All right.